It's funny because
Yeah.
the last guest that I had last week that I spoke with in private, he was actually talking about um, how he had his father, who was, I believe, going through chemotherapy, and uh, he was on like how many different prescription drugs, and then he switched them onto CBD, and it significantly helped him out. And it's interesting to see so many people like start off with CBD and starting to like look into cannabis and really the culture, which is kind of funny because like to talk about cannabis culture like in the 80s in America, it would be completely different than what it is now. So like based off of how you've seen cannabis evolve, and since you said that it's sort of been a part of your life for a long time, how have you seen it change? How have you seen it like destigmatize, and like what are your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, where around the corner from where I work, um, about a month ago, downtown Brooklyn, they opened up a dispensary, right? New York City has a medical marijuana program. A lot of people are not aware of it, but they do have a program. So they have a dispensary there. About 4 blocks away, about 4 or 5 blocks away, is the Brooklyn Detention Center, right?
Wow.
Where there are people incarcerated for marijuana. So it's like you got a jail down the block, people are incarcerated for marijuana, and then a few blocks away, there's this beautiful state of the art. It looks like it's from the Jetsons, this dispensary,
Hmm.
So that right there is like the epitome of the industry right now. Um, in other states in America, you have people literally under the jail for selling, consuming, possession marijuana. And then in other parts of the country, we have places like Colorado where the state government is running out of marijuana,
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely something that I want to address as well. The line is about the fashion, but I also definitely gonna have some activism behind it.
Yeah, it's weird. You're talking about that dichotomy and that split between like on one side of the street you could have a dispensary that is state of the art and has the latest in cannabis technology, and then you also have these detention centers, and it really speaks to how in the United States like you have states where it's completely legal and you can walk around stoned out of your mind and be completely fine, and then you have you walk across a line and then you would get thrown in jail.
Yeah.
How would you see um, the pathway towards cannabis legalization? Because for me, like I live in Texas, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and I came from California, so it's like the cannabis culture is just totally different. Um, like, do you do you see uh, like how do you sort of foresee this playing out? Do you think that it's just a matter of like, okay, this state needs to legalize it first, or do you think that there are certain activists who are leading the charge? Like, how do you see this playing out?
Um, I I think with all things with these type of racial dynamics in America,
Hmm.
I think it's going to be a fight, right? It's going to be a fight. When I think about cannabis legalization, I think about income inequality, right?
Hmm.
And as long as America's been America, there's always been that fight to keep this imbalance, right? So like right here in New York, there's like hold up. My understanding of it is that there's some hold up right now because New York is a big farm state. Upstate New York, a lot of
Hmm.
apples are
Hmm.
grown, and from my understanding, that demographic, the farmers, they want to control the legalization here in New York, because
Mm.
everyone knows it's a cash cow. We see what's happening in other states and other countries, and they're going to set it up where they keep black and brown folk out. What we have to
Hmm.
do is we have to get on a policy initiative. We have to get on a policy
Hmm.
initiative so that we can get ground in there as well. Real quick, I just wanted to say I think what they're trying to do here in New York is they're trying to say that if marijuana becomes legal, you have to had been in the farming industry in order to now get in it. Yeah, and then they
Oh, so
also,
you have to have like that history. You can't just like
yeah,
go in there
yeah,
straight.
yeah. You can't be no new farmers,
Wow.
no new farmers. Yeah, so
A- And it almost sort of like reinforces essentially the pre-existing system because a lot of farmers that tend to be supported by the government tend to be white owned, and so it still continues that history of like, or the ongoing discussion of how, there is this huge cash cow of, okay, you know legalizing cannabis, and it's a huge business. I mean, you have dispensaries, like individual dispensaries making like $1 million a month. So there's
wow.
so much money to be made, and especially when you talk about cannabis and CBD as an alternative for a lot of different prescription drugs, and just like using it as a method to provide for your family because it's a source of income. Like there's just so much going on, and you can almost sense like the government sort of waiting, like, oh shit, like how can we make money off of this? How can we strategize this to like make sure that our people get a chunk of this pie first? Like it's really
Yes,
weird seeing this. Like you can totally see the corporatization of cannabis.
yes, yes, absolutely. And with that comes the money. you
Hmm.
know that
Yeah,
comes the
yeah.
money comes with that influence, the policy comes with that influence. So what we have to do is we have to not be reactive, right? A lot of times we're reactive on social issues, and
Hmm.
there's a few organizations here in New York. One of them is Women of Color in Cannabis, that
Oh.
I attend. They do a lot of different seminars and things like that. Because right now, I think something that's really huge is just the information. A lot of people are not aware of like the basics, with the policy changes and where it's legal, where it's not, CBD, THC. So I think one thing that's really important is that we have to start just informing people on what's going on, right? And
Hmm.
then that way we could be proactive with some policy initiatives, because if we don't, the same thing is going to happen that happens with all the other industries that went from illegal to legal.
So from a policy perspective, like what do you think needs to be put into place to make sure that this all smoothed out? Like from a policy level, because I guess I'm not too familiar about the granular, like, okay, like policy based off of like certain states. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about like what the movement is like, what types of policies we should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, definitely. Um, People that are currently incarcerated for
Hmm.
marijuana, um, in states where it's legal, we should fight for retroactivity,
Hmm.
right?
Like
We should
like
fight for,
expunging records and.
yeah, definitely expunging records, but also if you're incarcerated for marijuana and then it becomes legal, we can't say, well, okay, from this date we legalized it moving forward. You got to make amends for the people that are currently incarcerated, right?
Yeah, because for all the years that they had essentially been in jail for a substance that we've now legalized and now commercialized.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
how does that like, how do you structure that? Like are there, like, what are the ongoing conversations like, oh, if were incarcerated for 5 years, like how do they calculate how much that is worth?
Well, as far as people receiving money
Hmm.
for time that they've been away, I don't see that happening. Right? I don't see that
Yeah.
happening. I mean, there people may push for that agenda. I was more in the line of if you're incarcerated and then they legalize it, you should be released immediately.
Correct.
All right, you
Correct.
should be released immediately. Yeah, as far as people receiving money for that, I don't know. I don't know how that
Hmm.
would work out, but I definitely believe people should be released if
Hmm.
they're incarcerated under certain laws. And then, we want to fight for policy initiatives where the guidelines or the process of getting in the industry we're not locked out because of finances or because of policies on you having to be a farmer prior or things like that. You know, we got to fight for policy that makes a level playing field.